If you give kids the inspiration and tools to change the world, it will change their lives in the process. These inspirational words are from Craig Kielburger, a true hero who is only 18 years older than I am, and started to change the world when he was only 12 years old. He has since helped over 1 million people believe that they can speak up and make changes to make the world a better place too. Craig is my hero of democracy topic, so let me tell you a little more about his story. In 1995, Craig Kielburger was a 12-year-old boy from Toronto. One day, he was reading the Toronto Star newspaper when he came across a story headline: Battle Child Labor, Boy, 12, Murdered. The story was about a boy named Iqbal Masih from Pakistan, who was forced to work in a carpet factory when he was just a little boy. And then he became a child rights activist to speak out against other kids like him being made to work in a factory so young and not having any rights or freedom to be a kid. Iqbal was killed for speaking out against the carpet industry and for talking about the rights of children. Craig was the same age as this boy, and he was shocked that this was actually a true story. I bet he didn't think that something like this would ever happen in Canada. Probably because he grew up in Canada and he thought all the people around the world had the same rights and freedoms as he did. After reading the full newspaper story, Craig did some more research on child labor. And after reading a little more about it, he asked his grade 7 teacher if he could talk about this topic with his classmates. The kids in his class were also very sad and mad that this could happen to a kid their age, and they all decided that they had to do something about this. So, 11 students offered their help. And this is when Kids Can Free the Children became an organization that Craig now calls a movement, or a group of people that have the same kind of interests. But a movement is a bunch of actions that makes things happen and cause change. This is something that I learned from Craig myself from going to 5 We Days, reading some of the stuff that he writes in books and online, and even going on a service trip to Kenya with him and his brother Mark and my family to go learn a little more about a small village called the Masai Mara. But I'll continue on the story about Craig Kielburger. Craig's parents were teachers, and they really supported him and his older brother Mark, who was involved too, to make a change that would bring more democratic rights and freedoms to children around the world. They passed around petitions to local leaders in their community. They got signatures from other people who agreed that children should have more rights. Craig also gave lots of speeches in schools, at his church, and in other communities. People started to listen to Craig and his brother, and the whole Kids Can Free the Change group. And they collected 3,000 signatures for a petition for the Prime Minister of India, calling for the release of an in-prison child labor activist. In 1995, when he was only 13, Craig went to Southeast Asia with an older friend. He met kids who were forced to work in really bad conditions, and they were all doing things that were very unsafe. And he could not imagine any kid in Canada being made to do this. The Canadian Prime Minister at the time, Jean Chrétien, was there at the same time, and Craig was so lucky that the Canadian journalists were there for the Prime Minister were also able to tell his messages. So, Craig and his messages became big news in Canada. This also made sure that the Prime Minister of Canada knew who he was, and he got to meet with Chrétien and tell him all about the labor crimes that he'd researched and learned on his trip. Craig was a child who was the voice of other children around the world, who could not speak up for their rights and freedoms. And he used the democratic tools he knew, like petitions, using his voice to speak loud, and talking to the media to make big changes in the world. Every young person has an issue that hits them in the heart, says Kielburger. But I believe that society has taught them that they don't have the power to change things, that they have to wait until they're adults to achieve results. Now, the Kids Can Free Children group is simply called We, and the idea that Craig first had to speak up, to use your voice, and to make changes to help other people are now taught in schools and are like events in We Day that I mentioned. And where now the world leaders like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and celebrities and regular people talk about how we can create change. This message is to kids all over Canada, the US, and other parts of the world, has made changes for kids all over the world. One person I remember really well when I went to Wee Day was a guy named Spencer West, who has no legs. He was bullied for this and had to make a lot of changes, but he never gave up. He also climbed a mountain to raise money and awareness for a village in Africa. He used his voice to speak out. I think Craig is a true hero of democracy because he used his voice as a Canadian to let people know about child labor in Southeast Asia. And he has inspired so many other people who are kids and teenagers and even celebrities to take action to change the world too. Craig always wears a t-shirt that says, "Be the change." And this quote is from Gandhi of India, who is also a hero of democracy. Craig says that over the years we've discovered that it is far more important to reach as many people as possible, but especially youth, and empower them with the knowledge that is not up to anybody else. It is time for them to make a difference.